Batwoman just having ended its second season, I wanted to make something a little different, and that is talking about the 6 Arrowverse second seasons and to rank them from worst to best. So I'll be talking about Arrow Season 2, The Flash Season 2, Legends of Tomorrow Season 2, Supergirl Season 2, Black Lightning Season 2, and obviously Batwoman Season 2. And this ranking is actually sort of hard because while the bottom 2 are kind of easy to place, I think that the top 4 are some of the best out of any of these shows. But anyway, let's get into it. So in last place I have Black Lightning Season 2, and truth be told, this is by far the season I remember the least out of. I don't think I've watched a single episode of this season since it aired, and I just vaguely kind of remember the painkiller stuff and how the season ended and some Jeff stuff, and that's kind of it. But I don't think I actually hated this season at all. I think I just found it sort of underwhelming because season 1 was so good, and then season 3 was also so good, so the second season just didn't leave much of an impression on me, and I kind of just forgot it, and a lot of what I remember about the show does come from seasons 1 and 3 rather than season 2, but I think I will rewatch the whole show pretty soon, probably after the current batch of shows stop airing. In 5th place, I have Supergirl Season 2, and this season is a little strange and I don't hate it at all, but the main plotline is just all around, kind of all over the place. What makes this season enjoyable is that it adds a lot of characters and elements that stand out as some of the best Supergirls ever put out. Like the first 2 episodes, they gave us the introduction to Superman, and those are still 2 of the best episodes in the entire Arrowverse for me. The addition of Miss Martian was really well done and gave tons of depth to Martian Manhunter's character. And I think that both Jimmy and Wynn were much better than season 1 in this whole season. We were also introduced to Mon-El and Mr. Mxyzptlk, who are some really cool characters, but then you also just have the whole back half of the season, which doesn't have near as much going for it as the first half. You have Rhea and her Daxamite army just feeling like rehashes of Astra and the Kryptonians from season 1, and it's kind of just annoying because this season does have all the elements to be as good as the top 4 on this list, but this season just doesn't really have a main storyline good enough to make use of those elements. And overall, this season just kind of feels like it's setting up for more important things later. Like Mon-El here is set up for his season 3 Legion storyline, Clark here is set up for future crossovers and for his eventual Superman and Lois show, and then Miss Martian isn't used a whole lot at all, but she comes back in season 5 and 6 in a much bigger way. So again, this isn't a bad season, it's just kind of a disappointing one. In 4th place, I have the most recent season, and that is Batwoman Season 2. But like I said earlier, these top 4 are all great, but the top 3 are borderline perfect seasons in my opinion. What keeps Batwoman Season 2 from being up there as almost perfect is that it has a somewhat mediocre first half. I don't think this season is ever boring, but there's a stretch from around episode 4 to 8 that is just kind of a chore to watch, and in a season of only 18 episodes, that is a pretty sizable chunk of the episodes that don't really help the overall season. And that's not to say that they're filler or not important, because they absolutely are. They're really important episodes. It's just that they're kind of uninteresting, and for the most part feel like sort of cheap knockoffs of a very similar plotline from Arrow Season 3. But outside of those 5 episodes, the season rarely is anything less than great. Like, we get introduced to villains who are easily the best that Batwoman has ever had. We have character arcs like with Ryan, Luke and Alice, and their character arcs are great, honestly. They make those characters grow in ways and make them the most fleshed out and interesting they've been in the show yet. And honestly, so much behind the scenes drama really could have made this season terrible, so it makes it just so much more incredible that the season turned out as great as it is, knowing what happened all behind the scenes. So I just kind of hope that they can keep up this greatness going into the 3rd season. In 3rd place, I have Legends of Tomorrow Season 2, and like I said, from this point on it gets really hard to rank them because I just love these next 3 seasons so much. And in terms of Legends, this was the one season where I was absolutely obsessed with the show. I just felt that absolutely everything was working this year. The Legion of Doom is the absolute high point of the show for me, and having them be a team for both Arrow and Flash gave the villains depth and backstory that we wouldn't have been able to get otherwise, and they felt incredibly threatening. And there was just something so cool about seeing Arrow characters like Malcolm and Damian teaming up with Thawne to fight some heroes. It's honestly something I would love the final season of Legends to be, and that is another Legion of Doom but made up of villains from the later seasons of Arrow and Flash, and also then they can bring in villains from Supergirl or Batwoman or Black Lightning or even Superman and Lois. This season also made Rip Hunter incredibly more interesting and fun to watch than he was in the first season, and we were just introduced to both Nathan and Maya, who are 2 of the best additions in the entire show for me. And the whole plotline about the Justice Society of America was something that long-time comic book fans could absolutely love. But even besides that, the solo episodes this season are just so much of higher quality than the solo episodes in seasons 4 and 5. The show was able to balance their current goofy tone with an undertone of seriousness that I feel like none of the other seasons have been able to really replicate yet. Season 3 definitely was the closest, but even then I feel like that season got a little bit too goofy at times. And then with Season 6, they are definitely getting close to that they're getting closer to it than Season 4 and 5 were for sure, but I still feel like there's something kind of missing that made Season 2 so great. But yeah, overall this is one of the Arrowverse's best, and this season showed us how much promise an extended and connected universe of shows could have. In second place, I have The Flash Season 2, and unlike Legends, Season 1 of Flash is what made me fall in love with the show, but Season 2 took everything I loved from the first season and just made it slightly better. Like, I thought Zoom or Hunter or whatever you want to call him was so much scarier and threatening than Thawne. He had the soundtrack, the voice, the creepy costume, and he was just such an imposing villain, and he's in my top 3 Arrowverse villains of all time, along with Prometheus and Deathstroke from Arrow. And this season also introduced us to the multiverse, something that has pretty much become the staple or centre of all of these shows. And the episodes where Barry and Cisco travel to Earth 2 are my favourite of the entire show. Earth 2 was such an amazing departure and change from what we'd seen for a season and a half. We were able to bring back tons of old characters but in new ways, and we were also able to get glimpses of future characters, like see how Caitlin would be with powers, see how Cisco would be with powers, and Harry himself was a great addition to the cast. And this was, well, I mean, it wasn't really an addition to the cast since Tom Cavanagh never left the show, but I mean, Harry was a great character they added. And it was great as well because the whole new wealth thing was fresh, it wasn't overused yet, so Harry was a really good addition that way. Plus, we just have to talk about Zoom's beatdown of Barry in episode 6, because never in any of the other shows have we seen a villain do this to one of the heroes, completely cripple them and drag their beaten body around the city. It's horrifying, but it's exactly the reason why I believe Zoom is the best Flash villain, and it's exactly the reason why I believe this is the best Flash season. It's one of the absolute best comic book TV show, or seasons I mean, that I've ever seen. And in first place is Arrow Season 2. Now yes, admittedly I'm hella biased when it comes to Arrow. It's my favourite show of all time, and I sort of find something to love in every season, including Season 4. But I do feel that Arrow Season 2 is the best out of these 6 seasons for a couple of reasons. And that's mainly because I do have small nitpicks with both Legends and Flash's second seasons. I feel like both of those seasons have a handful of episodes towards the very end that just aren't as good as the rest, or do feel like they're stalling until they can get the final set pieces on the board. But with Arrow Season 2, I don't think we ever have that. I don't think there's a time when the season slows down. The intensity just feels like it keeps rising more and more. And even like episode 7 or episode 17, which episode 7 is the one with Count Vertigo and episode 17 is the one with the Huntress, they feel like the most, I guess, slowest episodes of the season, or the ones that don't add a crazy amount. But even those episodes have some huge revelations, so you can't even call them fillers or one-offs because some big things happen in them. And then with Deathstroke, he's just such a personal villain that I don't feel like any of the other Arrowverse shows have been able to replicate, in terms of how Slade and Oliver were genuine friends. You know, they set up Slade for over a season beforehand, and then we saw them fall, and then we saw him become a villain. Like, with Arrow, they built up Slade so much, and like, you know, you get to know Slade as somebody who is Oliver's brother, so it's heartbreaking when they kind of take that away. You see how they come to care for each other. You know Slade is destined to be a villain, but you don't want him to be. You don't want that to happen. It really reminds me of Lex Luthor and Clark in the early seasons of Smallville, how they really are set up as friends and brothers before, you know one of them's going to become a villain. And it takes some great writers to make storylines like this work. But besides all of that, this season just kind of lays the foundation for the Arrowverse. Sure, season 1 starts it, but this is the season where everything starts to click into place. Like, we have Barry show up and talk about his mother, his father, even give little hints towards Reverse Flash. We have our first superpowers in the shape of the Mirakuru drug. We have Oliver finally accept his place as a hero and not just some vigilante. And along with that, we begin to see our first real team of heroes in the Arrowverse, with characters like Sarah and Roy. And there's just so much going for this season, and I think when it comes to comic book TV, you can't really get much better than this season. But that's all just my opinion on how I feel about them, how I'd rank them. But how do you feel? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Would you rank them the same way or differently? And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and all of that. And I hope you have a great day.